All right, here we are in our third review lesson, dividing with decimals. Today's objectives, I will be able to divide whole numbers by decimals, divide decimals by decimals, and solve problems involving dividing decimals. Right. So first off, we have vocabulary. It's important to know each part of a division problem and what they are, so that way when I use these terms, you're not spending 10 minutes trying to figure out what on earth I'm talking about. So first we have the dividend. And the dividend is the number in a division problem that is being divided. Right, so in this picture, we have a dad who's seemingly being divided by sports, radio, chores, the baby, getting stuff done, shopping, computers, pets, all that fun stuff. So the dad in this case is the dividend. He's being divided by all these different things. In an actual division problem, so here we have 42 divided by 6, 42 would be your dividend. When it's set up like a fraction, the number on top is the number that's being divided into groups, so that's your dividend. And when you look at long division, it's actually the number on the inside of the division symbol. That's the dividend. So the dividend is the number that's being divided. The divisor is the number in a division problem that's doing the dividing. Notice I have the OR part underlined here. When you think about a teacher, they teach. A worker works. Let's think of some other examples. So how about an employer? He employs people. Okay, so the is the doing part of the word. So if you have a divisor, it's doing the dividing. So if we look back at that same picture, dad's the dividend, and then all these things here, okay, are what he's being divided by. So these are all divisors. Okay, so this one's a little bit more complicated, but if you look at a problem, so now if 42 is the dividend, it's being divided into groups of 6. So 6 is doing the dividing, so it's the divisor. Again, in a fraction, that's going to be the denominator. And then in a long division problem, that's going to be the number on the outside. Okay, so basically when you're looking at a division problem, and you're looking at, okay, we're going to put it into groups of this many. So groups of 6 or groups of 4 or groups of 12. Those are your divisors. And then the last part, quotient. Now quotient doesn't mean divide, it's the answer to a division problem. So if you see the word quotient, it should imply that division was done or that you might need to do division to find the quotient. However, it does not mean divide. So the quotient in this case is the answer. So if I were to actually solve 42 divided by 6, that gives me 7. So 7 is the quotient of 42 and 6. 9 is the quotient of 45 divided by 5, and 11 is the quotient of 132 divided by 12. Right. So moving right along, when we're dividing a decimal by a whole number, we use regular long division. Okay, this one doesn't change much at all, and these would be good to have in your notes. So I have 75 hundredths divided by 5. So here's our dividend, and here's our divisor. So we know our divisor goes on the outside and our dividend goes on the inside. Okay, you can even put that in your notes somewhere. You can even put divisor, dividend. Okay, so we put 5 on the outside, 75 hundredths on the inside. Now to keep everything nice and lined up, typically what I'll do is I'll put up my boxes. So I'll put up the chairs. I'll already bring my decimal straight up since there's no moving of decimals when we're dividing by a whole number. So when the whole number is the divisor, we don't have to move decimals at all. But I do still bring my decimals straight up, and I may put boxes for each of my numbers. So here I look at 5. How many times does 5 go into 0? Well, that's 0 times because I have 0 pieces, so I can make 0 groups of 5. So 0 times 5 is 0. So then we subtract and we bring down. Now I have 7, so how many groups of 7 can I make with 5 pieces? Or I'm sorry, how many groups of 5 can I make with 7 pieces? Well, 7 divided by 5 is 1. So I can make 1 group of 5 with 7 pieces. 1 times 5 is 5, so I put that down here. I subtract. After making that group of 5, I have 2 pieces left. Okay, well, I still have to bring down that next 5. So now I have 25 pieces. How many times or how many groups of 5 can you make with 25 pieces? In this case, 25 divided by 5 is 5. Okay, so if I make 5 groups of 5, that uses 25 pieces, so I have 0 left. So I have none left over, so I don't have to keep going. So I know that 75 hundredths divided by 5 is 15 hundredths. Okay, if you want to go through and pause and try this one on your own and come back, you can. Otherwise, we can step through it again. Again, divisor, dividend. So 3 goes on the outside, and 2 and 52 hundredths goes on the inside. Put up my chairs, bring up my decimal. Okay, and the chairs just help me to make sure my numbers are lining up correctly so I have them on the right place of the decimal. So I have 2 pieces, 3 goes into 2, 0 times. Bring down the 2. Bring down the 5. So now I have 25 pieces. How many groups of 3 can I make with 25 pieces? Well, I know that 8 times 3 is 24, so that means I can make 8 groups of 3 with 25 pieces. Because if I made a whole nother group, that would be too many. So 8 times 3 is 24. So those 8 groups of 3 is going to take up 24 pieces. I'll have 1 left over. I still have to bring down the 2. Now I have 12 pieces, and I know that I can make 4 groups of 3, and I'll have 12, and that'll leave me with 0 pieces left over. And my answer in this case is 0 and 84 hundredths. Again, you can look at this in several ways. So you can say 2 divided by 3. Can't do it. Or you can look at it and say, okay, I have 2 pieces. How many groups of 3 can I make? 0. It all means the exact same thing. All right, when you're dividing a decimal by a decimal, it's still long division, but there's 2 extra steps in it sometimes. So we have to set up the problem as long division. So I have 3 and 6/10 divided by 1 and 2/10. So when I set that up, it looks like this. I have the 1 and 2/10 on the outside because it's the divisor. Then I have to move the decimal on the outside number, so on the divisor, over until it hits the division symbol. So I have to move the decimal on the divisor until it would be bumping into this long division sign. I kind of look at it and tell students that it's like a party. So everybody here is already in the party, and everybody here is waiting to get in. Well, the decimal wants to skip ahead and get to the door first. So that's what you need to do when you're dividing a decimal by a decimal. You need to get that decimal into the party first. So we do that. We move it over 1 time. Okay, but now since this decimal moved once, it's kind of a rule, even at this party, that if this decimal moves and skips in line 1, that this decimal has to move and skip in line the same amount. So in this case, since we move this decimal once, we have to move this decimal once. All right, so then now we go ahead and divide as normal. So now it looks like 36 divided by 12. And when we go ahead and do that, I know that 12 can go into 36 3 times. 3 times 12 is 36. And so my answer, or the quotient in this case, is 3. Again, the hardest part for students to remember is not actually moving that decimal the first time, but remembering to move that decimal on the inside as well. All right, so here what I want you to look at is how many times do you have to move the outside decimal? This one is, so this one will be a we try, and this one will be a you try. So this one you're going to do on your own. So let's look at the first one. How many places do you move the outside decimal? If you said 3, you're correct because it has to go 1, 2, 3 places to get to the front. So based on that, how many places do I need to move the inside decimal? Since I moved it 3 on the outside, I have to move it 3 on the inside. Now here, I know that there's no number here, so we don't stop, we have to add a 0. Okay, so again, this one is a you try, so it says how many places do you move the outside decimal and the inside decimal, so you need to answer both. So this one and this one. And you have to determine this one first, the outside decimal first, before you can determine the inside. All right, so let's do a couple of we try problems here. Again, you could do these ahead of me and then check your answers, or you can do it with me as we go through. So since 4 is the divisor, it goes on the outside. And since 3 and 98/100 is the dividend, it's being divided, it goes on the inside. Put up my chairs, bring my decimal straight up, and put up my chair. Okay, 4 goes into 3, 0 times. 0 times 4 is 0. Subtract. Bring down the 9. 4 goes into 39. 9 times. 9 times 4 is 36. So 39 minus 36 is 3 left over. Bring down the 8. 4 again goes into 38 9 times. And I subtract. Now I have 2 left over. When we're dividing with decimals, we don't just say remainder 2. When we're dividing with decimals, we can add another 0 here because it doesn't change the value. So add another 0. That's a horrible looking 0. I apologize. Add another 0, and since we add another 0, we have to add another box. Now this is where students make the mistake of going, okay, 4 goes into 0 0 times. But we finished with subtracting, so we have to remember to bring down. It's not 4 goes into 0, it's how many times does 4 go into 20. And in this case, we know it's 5. 5 times 4 is 20. I subtract, I get 0. So 3 and 98/100 divided by 4 is 0 and 995 thousandths. All right, so here we have 0 and 12 hundredths as the divisor, and we have 122 and 6/10 as the dividend. Since we're dividing with decimals, we move that decimal all the way until it hits the sign. So I moved it twice, so that means I have to move it twice on the inside. And so I have to add a 0. Here I have 12. Now this became 12, and instead of 122 and 6/10, this became 12,260. And the decimals now are both here. So you don't have to place them, but you can if you want to. So let's put up all of our seats. So 0, 6, 2, 2, and 1. 12 goes into 1 0 times. 12 goes into 12 once. Now I bring down the 2. Well, 12 goes into 2 0 times. So this 0 I do put up here because I did bring down. So I have to make sure that this 0 goes up there because this 0 is important. It's not fluff at the end, it's actually a placeholder. So 0 times 12 is 0. Subtract, I get 2. Bring down my 6. 12 goes into 26 twice. 2 times 12 is 24, so I subtract that. And I bring down. 12 goes into 20 once. Minus 12 is 8. Well, now here's the thing. I have to add a decimal now because I have 8 left over, so I have to add a decimal and add a 0. So now I have to bring that 0 down. Okay, remember, I don't go 12 into 0 right away. I have to do the bring down part, which I hadn't done yet. And 12 goes into 80. Well, if we don't know this off the top of our head, which sometimes we might not, pick a number. Start with 5. 12 times 5 in this case is 60. So I know I can go a little bit higher. So let's go one higher. 12 times 6. 12 or 2 times 6 is 12. Carry 1. 72. If I go one more, so if I look at 72 plus 12, that's going to give me 84. And that's going to be too much. So I know that it has to be 6. So here I have 6. And I'm actually going to bring this up here because I'm running out of space. And I subtract. Now I have to add another 0 and another box. I can add as many zeros as I want. And I should add zeros until I either figure out that the decimal repeats or that it ends. So now 12 goes into 60. Well, I did this already. I know that that's 5 times. I multiply. 5 times 12 is 60. Subtract. I have 0. Now in this case, I did have to bring my decimal straight up, and I could have done that right away, and maybe I should have. It might have been helpful. But this is why you put your boxes up, because here you know you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers in front of your decimal. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers in front of my decimal and 2 behind. So I know my decimal's in the right place. So in this case, my answer right now looks something like this: 0, 1, 0, 2, 1, decimal 6, 5. Well, we don't need this 0 in front. That was just a placeholder for us for the time being. So I know my answer is 1021, and notice you don't say and until you have the decimal, 65 hundredths. Don't forget your comma because that is important. Right, and then the last part of this are the you-try problems. So you have 1 and 23 hundredths divided by 6, and 42 and 3/10 divided by 12 hundredths. As always, if you have any questions, make sure to bring them to me, or to jot them down or send them to me in an email, so that way we can go over them in class.